Hi everyone, my name is Fung, and I'm a portfolio manager here at Empire Life Investments. I manage fixed income portfolios, and I thought I would record this off the cuff to give a brief recap of one of the events of the summer that had both fixed income and equity investors on the edge of their seats waiting for it, which was U.S. Federal Reserve Chair Powell's speech at the annual Jackson Hole Symposium in August. So typically the market likes to look out for Jackson Hole because it's an event where historically the Federal Reserve has taken the opportunity to announce changes in their thought process and approach. Just last year, the Fed announced their new approach to inflation targeting of FATE, or Flexible Average Inflation Targeting, at this meeting. Going into it, market participants were looking for some guidance from the Fed about their intentions to begin tapering the pace of asset purchases, which would remove some of the accommodation given to the market in the pandemic. We had seen publicly that we'd seen some Fed governors publicly speaking in the weeks and months ahead, talking about the need to begin talking about tapering at this meeting. The market was also looking for an update as to how much progress had been made toward the Fed's quote-unquote substantial further progress targets with respect to the two main objectives of the Fed, which are 1, achieving maximum employment, and 2, achieving price stability. Lastly, the market was looking for an update on the impact of the spread of the Delta variant of COVID-19 on the trajectory and the durability of the recovery. So at Jackson Hole, Chairman Powell reiterated the goals of the Fed, which are achieving maximum employment and price stability. He also acknowledged that inflation had run up quickly, as we've seen in the CPI inflation numbers, and that it was a cause for concern, but they continued to think of it as transitory given the lack of breadth in the components of the CPI, or the Consumer Price Index, and currently moderating inflation levels for components that had been affected by the pandemic, such as used cars and commodities. In addition, they said that long-term inflation expectations have remained stable, and global disinflationary forces like technology and an aging demographic have not disappeared overnight. So putting that together, substantial further progress had been made on the inflation or price stability front, but there was still some room to approach this target on the employment front. The Fed still views the U.S. labor market as one with substantial slack, along with a lower labor force participation rate than in past recoveries. Keeping those two things in mind, that means the current pace of asset purchases will be maintained, but the Fed could look to start the reduction of asset purchases at the end of the year if the data supports it and future employment reports continue to strengthen. The Delta variant was also presented as a near-term risk to the outlook. So there were two important takeaways from his speech. First, there was an emphasis from the Fed on how there was no mechanical link between the timing and the pace of tapering asset purchases and the timing of rate hikes thereafter. It was important to communicate that to the market, that the Fed wouldn't rush into a hiking cycle right after beginning the tapering process. Powell also emphasized that history has shown that tightening monetary policy as a reaction to transitory inflation could do more harm than good, and given the current state of the U.S. labor market, could be harmful. Second, they put an emphasis again on waiting to have the employment picture and the economic picture confirmed by hard data. This is important, and it was helpful for them to reassure the market that the Fed is a data-dependent one and will allow some time for the employment figures to provide some color as to the state of the economy before making a decision. Putting everything together, the speech was viewed as quite dovish by the market. Yields declined in the U.S. immediately thereafter, with the 5-year tenor leading the rally, leading to the U.S. curve steepening somewhat, and in Canada, rates followed in sympathy. One of the concerns going into the meeting was that the current pace of economic progress made in the recovery was enough to pull forward the tapering of asset purchases into September, October, but the Fed eased that concern with its statements at Jackson Hole. We're continuing to keep a close eye on inflation, employment, and other economic data over here, but wanted to give you all a brief update as to what the outcome of this year's Jackson Hole meeting was. I hope it was helpful, I hope you found it interesting, and thank you very much for your time.